Hi everybody, welcome to the Harper Homestead. If you just came across this video, I'm Debbie Harper, and it is, gosh, we are in mid-February now. It's still pretty cold here where I live. I live in Montana, but I don't know about everybody else, but I get really excited to start seeds, and usually I start more closer to the end of February, but I wanted to get some of the some onions and some celery started because last year it seemed that my onions were a little bit smaller last year, and I waited a little bit later. So I just kind of want to get them started to see if that helps. I can keep them in the house a lot longer. I could keep them under grow lights, which I have, and I could show you. And I seem to be able to get them to grow really good inside. It's just getting them outside at the right time. So this time I'm gonna maybe loosen up the dirt a little bit more also. Look at the nutrients in the soil, but most likely I just want to get them started a little bit earlier, give them more time to grow. And they did fine. I've been growing onions for the last 2 years, but like I said, they were just a little small. So I still have some Johnny Seeds. I usually get I get some of these from Johnny Seeds, and then I have some chives from Baker Creek that I'm going to start as well. But for the most part, I remember one time I was watching this video and it was talking about how it's better to use all your onion seeds and not save them for multiple years because they more than likely do not grow the second year. But I got these seeds actually, some are from 2019, some are from 2021, and I had no problem growing them on the third year. I tried to double up because I was a little worried that they weren't going to grow, and all of them took. So I'm not listening to that anymore because that year I had a crazy amount of onions. So, which isn't a bad thing. Now that I have a freeze dryer, I'm going to try to freeze dry some of the onions and have those like minced onions, dried minced onions. We use that a lot in seasoning and use it that way. And then also grind some up for some onion powder as well. So I'll still probably do a large amount. But what I usually do is what I start off with, and I just wanted to make sure that I documented this, number one, for myself, so I remember what I did. But what I've started getting is the seed starting mix, and I get it from Gardener's Supply Company. It seems to be the best just to start your seeds. That's what I've been using, and I haven't had any problem germinating any kind of seeds. You can also just order seed starters. Well, they'll come a little bit started for you, and then you could put them in the ground, but seeds are so much cheaper, and they're really not that hard to start. And the other thing I do is I have a big, just 5-gallon bucket. What I do is I pour the soil in here and then soak it really good. You know, you don't want it to grow moss or anything, but you soak it really good so the soil mix is nice and moist for when you put it into your containers. One thing that I do like, which I believe I got these from the same company, Gardener Supply, but I've seen them at our local stores here in town. But these work really, really well. And they are containers like those self-watering containers. This one's pretty old. But they're the self-watering containers, and they're basically have the little seed pods as a tray. And then there's a tray, like a cloth, that actually holds water. So you kind of fill up the bottom of the tray full of water. It's pretty deep. and there's a little stand that kind of keeps it from actually being submerged in the water. But you leave a little bit of this hung over the side so it's actually touching the water inside the tray, and that soaks up water. And so now it's just pulling up the moisture from your little seed container through the holes, and it keeps it watered. So you just need to make sure that you check the water in here. The other thing that's really good is they have these little clear tops on it. And what that does is make a little greenhouse, so it absorbs the warmth. And I have a light, and the light is just like those illuminant lights that you see in the garage. I have a light with the stand, and I can raise it up and I can bring it down. And I usually, when I'm doing like things that like a lot of heat, like tomatoes and green peppers, I put it really low down, and you will see it start to get moist in there, and it starts to get it really warm, and that'll help germinate the seeds. So I usually do that as well on certain seeds. So you could do that. I think that works really well. Someone asked me about this container, and I actually seen it on a lot of people's, and I don't remember which one. There's a few Instagrams that I was watching. I want to say it's probably a few years ago I saw it. I try to follow people that are local in my area. So like the Pacific Northwest area, I'll try to follow anyone that has the cold winters, anywhere from Wyoming all the way to North Washington. I will follow them and just kind of see how their weather's doing, because my season is really, really short. So I actually start a lot inside, and I'll have this whole basement just full of plants that I'll be rotating. This is the south part, the southeast end, so I can put a bunch of plants. Like I have some herbs that I kept from last season, and they're down here, and they're just right up against the window to keep getting some of that sunlight in the morning. So I can do that here and rotate them just to make sure everyone's getting some sunlight and some of the artificial light as well. And I'll just rotate it through until I can buy more lights. They're pretty expensive, so I think I buy like one a year, because they were for these nice ones that actually go up and go down. They have some other ones that you could put on timers, you know, so you're starting to, for here, it doesn't get sunny till maybe, it's starting a little bit earlier. Now we're probably right around 8 o'clock where the sun starts to come up, as opposed to the summertime, the sun's up at like 5 a.m. So we're pretty dependent on the sun here, so we really do get cold and gloomy winters here in Montana. So I do like to start everything, and I would think that most people do in the north when you're so close to getting that, or getting the least amount of sun in the winter time. So I think I saw these on I think it was Melissa K. Norris, if you want to look for her. She doesn't do too many YouTube channels, but I've seen her speak before. And I was seeing one of her videos. It might have been one of her YouTube channels, or she has this cool Pioneers Academy, which I joined probably 2 or 3 years ago. But I've seen this on a whole bunch of people's blogs, but she might have been the first one that I saw it. And these are like for pictures. You can get them at Michael's or any kind of craft store on Amazon. Just look for the best price. But I think they say they're for photograph organizers, but they're perfect for the seeds. I like, this one's clear, but I have some colored ones that, you know, just have it a little bit darker. So that's what I use for my seeds. Anyway, so let's get started. I just wanted to talk and remind myself a little bit about what I am starting, because I do forget. And I'm not good with writing everything down, so it's easier for me to go back and look at my own videos. That's really what I started doing this for. So when you're looking at your seeds, they will tell you the germination days of how many days it takes how many days to harvest and those things. And so it's good to look at your onions depending on where you're at. And if you're going to do a large amount of them, you want to get onions that actually store really well. And so that's a big part of looking at your onions. The ones that I have are, I have some hybrids. These are I like red onions. I use a lot of red onions. I like their taste, especially when you saute them. And yellow onions. So I have the Patterson yellow onion. And then I have it looks like, I don't know, this one doesn't even have a name on it. It just says hybrid red onions. And I usually get organic onions as well. I use organic soil just to put the least amount of chemicals on your food that you're going to eat, obviously. So what you need to do if you just came across this and you're looking at different things of what can you start early, the biggest thing to do is if you go to the, I think it's the USDA, what's it called? USDA garden zone. You need to find out what your zone is in your area. For example, I'm a 5B. And based on that, it will tell you when your last frost date is and your first frost date. So, for example, we'll get frost all the way up to the mid to the end of April. So usually the rule of thumb around here is nobody puts anything into the ground until after May Day. Well, this past year we got hit with usually the frost could come as early as mid-September. I haven't lived in Montana for a long period of time. I've lived here since 2019. So I'm going on my 5th year. About 4.5 years we lived here, and we haven't had frost that early. One day we had snow, like on the last day of September 30th, which was really odd. But then it was like 60 or 70 degrees later, so it wasn't anything that could kill any of our plants. But this past year, we still are getting snow earlier. It seems like it's been coming earlier and earlier, where before we maybe got snow towards Christmas, like where it got really hard freeze, but you can't depend on that. You kind of go with those growing zones and just be prepared. So we always plan on being frozen or preparing for winter by mid-October. And if we're lucky and we still get fall through October and November, that's great. We'll keep harvesting what we have. But you need to definitely be prepared for frost before that. And if you get lucky, you get lucky. So this year we do have, David, my husband, he's built 2 high tunnels for me. So we're going to use those this year to see if that will help. I'm going to go check that. High tunnel, put a thermostat in there and see if we can monitor. And this will be the first year, so we'll just be learning what we're doing. So anyways, when you're going and looking at your seeds, you really need to make sure that you look for how many days it takes to germinate, where they need to be planted, how far away to plant them. So for now, all I'm going to do is I usually don't put one thing in each pod, especially with onions, because I can thin them out later, and they start really thin and small. I'll probably put about 5 or 6 seeds in each pod just to get them started, and then as they grow I can move them to bigger. I have a bunch of these which I got from Bootstrap Farmers. They have really cool and they seem to last, because I usually save, if you ever go to the nursery, I save those cups, but that plastic is so thin, they break all the time. This one is a pretty thick and hardy one. I mean, you can get different sizes, so I can move them to these at a later time, but just starting them, I'll put them in the pods and I'll multiply them. In the past, I also, I don't go to the store too much anymore, but I've had these for a few years. if you save like any kind of plastic containers that you have, like my yogurt containers, sometimes my, this is a ricotta cheese container. This other one looks like Parmesan cheese, just those kind of things. And then I'll just put holes in here. And you can use these too to transplant to bigger containers until you can get them outside. So that's just something cheap and easy that I do. If you can get some with clear lids, those are cool too, because then you can also use those as little, this is what I do sometimes, as little greenhouses. Something clear, that way the light can still go through it and you can just lay it on top, and that creates your own little greenhouse. So I do that too. So you don't have to spend a whole bunch of money getting this stuff. Like I said, I've been here for 4.5 years, and I probably buy just a couple of things every year. Maybe I'll buy a couple, like another package of containers. I'll probably buy one more package, of these seed things, just to help, because I usually run out too. So it just kind of depends on how much you're growing. But I mean, when I first started, this is all I had, and I had them everywhere. I even had solo cups, because we usually have a lot of I have a big family, so we have big events. And so I use the solo cups, and I just put holes in there, then I could do a Sharpie on them, and I use those for multiple years. I still have some. So I do that a lot as well. So be creative. Don't go out and spend a whole bunch of money if you haven't, if this is just you starting to do these things. That's what I suggest. So you got to find your zone. Make sure you find your zone, and because on the packages it'll say like how many days it takes to sow them indoors versus outdoors. Like for this, it says in short season areas, which I am in, to sow seeds indoors in late February to mid-March. So that's what I knew. That's usually what I do. Like I said, I'm trying to get a head start to get them a little bit bigger before I get them into the ground. Let's see. It also tells you the pH level, so you can test your soil if you like, if you're having a problem with that. I got these little rapid test soil testers. There's 40 tests in this package. It's from Luster Leaf. You can always try that as well. So those are the things that I'm going to do. I'm going to get started and get these in the ground, and then hopefully show you, and we can experiment how it does. I don't think I'm going to put these in a tunnel, but maybe I'll put some in the tunnel and some outside the tunnel and see if that makes a difference, which is always fun too. So anyways, I hope you guys, everyone gets started with their seeds. That was just some of the tools that I'm going to use. And like I said, I'm going to do onions and celery at this time just to get them a little bit of a head start. And then probably in a couple weeks, I'll start my tomatoes. I usually start my tomatoes earlier than a lot of people, but I like my tomatoes to be well started when I go put them outside, because they grow pretty fast, and we consume a lot of tomatoes and make a lot of tomato sauce and tomato paste for all sorts of things. So that's what I'm going to do. Hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully you guys are ordering your seeds. It's still plenty of time to order your seeds, get them started, but I just wanted to document what I'm doing and when I'm going to start first. So far, what I've done is my hybrid red and yellow onions. These are the ones I've had for a while. That this is just the rest of them that I wanted to do. And these ones I know do really well, that I've grown them before. And I usually I have this huge box of popsicle sticks. I don't know if it says how many are on there. 2,000 popsicle sticks, and that's just how I keep track of what I planted. And the reason why I'm saying that is because this year is the first year I wanted to look into working on saving seeds. And the thing about onions, and there's a few other plants are like this, so is they take a couple years, like carrots are another one, before you can actually save the seeds. So that makes it hard. So what I have is, those are my hybrids, and I want to keep track of them because those ones will just harvest and eat. You have to also get non-hybrid or heritage type of seeds. So the hybrid is exactly what it sounds like. It's two different plants that they've come together to make a seed that maybe they like the characteristics of the two primary plants, but when you have hybrids, a lot of them don't continue that way, right? They might the next time sprout and they only have one of the parents' characteristics. So you kind of have to look at it that way. It's kind of like your genes. So I bought different organic seeds that aren't hybrid, that are red onion. I have a, I think it's called a Rosa di Milano seed, which is not a hybrid. So I need to mark those because they kind of get a little bit, they're harder to save seeds, but I want to practice. I have time. Anyway, so when it comes to the onion seeds, it takes 2 years. So that means that I have to get non-hybrid. I need to plant them, and then they will grow into your onion bulbs. And you have to pick some to save, and you have to save them in a cool spot over winter. So then they're like bulbs that you can purchase onion seed starts as well. But those bulbs that you want to put back in the ground the next season once it's warm. And so somehow I got to be able to store them in a cool area, and then you plant them back in the ground the second time. And that cold, the cooling of that seed is what I read is what's going to help it actually germinate a stalk that is going to have a flower the second year. So then you put it back in the ground, and then you get it to grow back the stem, and hopefully a flower on the end of it. And that flower, like if you buy any flowers, or if you see flowers and they go to die, a lot of times those are the seeds of the flower. You can save those, or you can sprinkle them around so they come back the next year. That flower is going to be your onion seeds. And so I just think it's good to try and learn that. So that way, at one time I remember a few years ago, it was actually really hard to get seeds. And so I think they've caught up with the excitement of people growing again, which is really smart and good. So I think they've caught up to that demand, and so I seem to be able to get seeds just fine. But you never know. You need to know that. I like knowledge. I like learning those things. I like trying new things. I like being independent. I'm a very independent person. I think that's just who I am, and that's my nature. So being able to start your seeds and save your seeds and keep that going for the future, I think is like invaluable. That knowledge and ability to do that and create your own food, even if you're doing a small scale, just like in your backyard, knowing that and just keeping one bulb to do that the next year, so you can just keep it going just to feed yourself and your family. I think those are huge skills to have. And so that's the main part why I started doing this. I am a pretty independent person. I like knowledge. I like knowing. I don't like just getting things and not knowing where it came from or how it happened or how to do it. I like being able to decide, I know how to do that. That's not worth my time. I'll buy that, or I'll buy those seeds. So maybe that'll be one of these that, it's not worth it, and that's what I'll do. But it's something fun. That'll be something new that I'm going to do this year. So I got it for scallions. I have some non-hybrids for scallions. They call them bunching onions, I think, is if you see that, those are the scallions. So I have some bunching onions also. These are called Evergreen Hardy White. I also have some green bunching scallions. Chives, all of these kind of work the same way. Common is as the type, the common chives. I told you about the red one, the Rosa, and I think I had another one. These New York early are these yellow ones that I also have. So I'm going to start those as well, but I wanted to make sure, one, that I remind myself to pull them up for the new year, pick some to try to store them and see if I can store them and keep them cool enough to save and hopefully get some seeds next year. So we'll see if that works at all. I'm excited to do that. I think that will be really cool to be able to save your own seeds and see if you can get that to work. So the onions will be new. I love onions. We use a lot of onions around here. Celery, whether I'm making bone broth or soups, sauteing onions and celery is something we do often. So those two are what I'm going to start. I'll make a few of those. Also for the celery, what I'm going to try to do, I could probably do this for the onions too, is like I said, I have that freeze dryer, which was pretty expensive, that we saved up for. And then David got it as a gift for me. I think it was for Mother's Day, actually. But it was a great gift. I was stoked. But like dicing up the onions and then freeze drying them. The thing with the freeze dryer, and you can use a dehydrator and things like that, the freeze dryer is supposed to save more of the nutrients. And so you're supposed to keep like 98% of the nutrients in your food when you freeze dry them. But also they can last for like hundreds of years, right? When all that moisture is out and you just store them. So think about that also, of just being able to, if you have an abundant amount of food, because like you can't keep celery, obviously, you know, those will go bad, or carrots will go bad. Onions sometimes will start growing if your house is too warm and they're not stored well, or they're not a good storing onion. But just dicing them up and then freeze drying them and putting them in, you know, one of our mason jars or a container, and then you already have them, and then you can throw them into the pot to saute them or add them to your soups, and it's just like having a fresh onion. It's pretty darn cool. So that's something else that I can really do if you have too much, if you grow too much. Don't throw it away. I'm not in for selling or things like that. I just recently retired. I'm not into getting another job anytime soon, or I'm really just trying to, it's kind of fun for me. I'm an accountant, so the fun part for me is seeing how much it costs to grow it, what's the cost benefit, how we recover the cost of buying that freeze dryer. Those things are fun to me, but that's because I'm a number nerd. So just being able to do that, I could tell you right now, the amount of food that money we spend on food has already, just because I'm a budgeter, so we have budget for food, is dropped drastically just from growing some food, like some big items that we always buy. It's not like garlic's expensive. But you know what is expensive? Seasoning. Seasoning is ridiculous. I think it's, the more I cook, that's actually something that's really expensive. And so being able to freeze dry it, some of the food for those seasoning, whether it's the peppers, we go through a lot of chili powder, a lot of cumin. I grow cumin. The peppers I pretty much suck at right now, but that's my goal, to use that high tunnel. That was the reason why we got it, just to get it warmer. And because peppers like heat. And so we need to be able to get more water to my plants is one thing, but heat, hotter area for them to grow in. Tomatoes and peppers like heat. So the tomatoes I've been finding, but the peppers I haven't been able to get to grow really well. So that's going to be our goal this year. But maybe growing that and making chili powder would be huge. And so cooking a lot, you go through a lot of seasonings, and I never really cooked that much before. And then once I started doing that, I used to avoid the grocery shopping too, because I hated doing that. But now I'm more patient and more into cooking and going to the store and buying stuff for my family. I notice all of those things. So I think seasoning is ridiculously expensive. But just not having to buy onions and garlic and just common stuff. Or in the summertime, I don't think I ever went to the grocery store except to buy milk and cereal. Those were the two things that I had to go to the store for. My kids, my growing boys, I think if I let them just live off of Cinnamon Toast Crunch and milk, they would do that. But cereal is very expensive too, so we don't let them do that. But just being a numbers person, I noticed those things and how little we spent in the summertime because, that's when a lot of the fresh produce was available than we do now in the wintertime, now that stuff has ran out. So one is learning how to let the food be able to save the food so you can use it all winter long, I think is one big thing to learn this year. And that freeze dryer was one of the investments that we used to try to do that because we were researching that and we see it at our local stores. They sold it, the freeze dryer at one of our local stores. And it comes with a lot of stuff, but like I said, it was very expensive. But in the long run, and this was before the grocery stores even went ridiculously expensive right now. We went to the grocery store because we actually, we buy a cow from a friend's family, and we just bought half a cow, and we finally were making it through some of that meat, and my boys were asking for steak, and we didn't have any more steak left. So I finally said, okay, well, let's go buy some. And we didn't even buy straight steak. We forgot what we ended up buying. I forget what part of beef that we ended up buying, but a big, I don't know, it was probably like 20 pounds. And then slice it, because I'm always looking at what's the best way. Now that you know all these things and how to cut stuff, so then we can slice it, and we got 12 actual steak pieces from this large part of a cow. I can't even remember what it was. If it was wasn't the roast, but I forget what part it was. And we ended up slicing it to have steak, and then I have and I've had this for a long time. What are those? The sealers where you vacuum seal. And so then I just vacuum sealed it into packages of 2 because sometimes, it might just be me or David, or maybe David's gone and I only need a half of one and I could share with somebody. Anyway, so we split them up and we sealed them that way, and that is way cheaper than buying pieces of steak. A lot of times people just go to the store that week and buy what you need that week, but it's way cheaper to buy it in bulk and do the extra work and cut it and then seal it. And luckily, David's on board with that too. So it took us, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes to cut it and seal it. And we bought a lot. We ended up buying pork loin because we don't have pigs either. And I haven't found someone to buy a pig from, otherwise I would. So we bought a huge, pork butt and pork loin that I sliced up for like boneless pork chops, and we sealed all those. We have chicken. I have an endless amount of chicken. We grow our own meat birds and then harvest those and keep them in the freezer. So if you can I'm hoping to one day have cattle, and I'm not looking to support the whole town. I'm just looking to support my growing family and have one of those. If we can have, I think we would go through 1 cow a year and probably 1 pork. And then we go through about, I think this last time we did like maybe 60 chickens. That sounds like a lot, but we go through more than 1 chicken a week. We eat a lot of chicken. If you have 1 cow, 1 pork a year, and chicken, that's all we really need. I told the boys they're going to have to learn to fish this year because I want fish in my freezer too, so might have some trout as well, just to mix it up. But then you never have to go to the grocery store, and it's like $2.50 to buy a chicken, $2.50 to buy a baby chicken, and then for 8 weeks of feed is not that much. So, and we put them out on the grass, so that if they could forage for like bugs and eat your grass, they don't go through much food at all. I mean, maybe a bag a month if you let them. I let mine roam, and the bag's like $23. So, and you only need 2 bags for 8 weeks. It's like $40. To do 65 chickens is pretty darn good. So that's what we're gonna do. Like I said, I know I talk a lot of numbers, is because that's just what I do, but I've always been like that. Even my kids have been trained that way. Even as adults, everybody, when they call me, they just talk about what the good deals they got, what they got on sale. You know, it's better to buy last season's stuff because it's cheaper. Anyways, so that's what I'm going to try to do. I wanted to remember to talk about, if you're going to go buy onions, not to buy the hybrids if you want to try to save them in the future. So, but if you're just trying, like I said, the hybrids is usually what you can find quickly, and that's what you're getting at the grocery stores, and it's not a big deal. But you probably don't want those if you want to try to seed or save the seeds of your onion. And so that's what I'm doing this year. So that's what these will be. So hopefully that was helpful as you start to look for your different onions. And I will try to remember that for the future if the seed saving goes good for me. So we won't know for 2 years, so hopefully I'll find this video again in 2 years in February. We'll see if it went well or not. So thanks for hanging out with me. Hope everyone enjoys February and picking out some new seeds.